UFC 278 is almost here. I'm going to give you my final picks. We'll talk about some prop opportunities and we're going to build some lineups. So make sure you watch until the end. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. If you haven't, go back and watch the video from earlier in the week. That'll be linked right in the top of the description. That's where we go over the entire slate, fighter by fighter, salary by salary, talk about spots that we like, spots that we don't like. Last week, a lot of dogs came through, but it was a good week. Did our guy, Nate the Train, show up?
I showed up!
Okay, very good. Did Priscilla cash as an underdog? Of course. Did Lupi and Bruno let us down? Terribly. But I still ended up doing well. I know a couple of you did well, and if you didn't do well last week, this seems like a great week to get your revenge.
I'm vengeance.
Get the like out of the way, get the algorithm comment out of the way, because we have a lot to discuss, and I need you locked in. Since we've had no changes to the card throughout the week, we can start right at the value plays. These are plays at 8,000 and below, and starting us off is Jose Aldo right up at 8,000. There's a few reasons why I like Aldo this week. Obviously, there's a big gap in the striking department between him and Merab. I think on the feet, Aldo wins every minute of this fight, and Merab is very hittable, susceptible to hooks, which Aldo is excellent at, and I could see Aldo starting to time knees and uppercuts because Merab is going to be shooting for takedown after takedown. There's also a huge gap in experience here. Jose Aldo has fought for longer, he's fought the much better competition, and this is a massive step up in competition for Merab. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention his legendary takedown defense sitting currently at 90%. The only person to ever get more than one takedown on Jose Aldo in a fight was Frankie Edgar years ago, and when he took him down twice for a total of less than 57 seconds of control time. Jose Aldo is harder to get down than greased up deaf guy. The reason Merab gets so many takedowns is because he can't keep guys down. He doesn't have a great top game. So even if he gets Jose Aldo down, Aldo's going to get right back up, and I don't expect him to spend much time on the mat at all. Currently, a decision win for Jose Aldo sits at around plus 240, which I think is a great spot this week. I also think that's the most likely outcome here. He probably scores around 75 to maybe 80 points on DraftKings, so I'm not dying to get here. He probably pulls high ownership as well, but he is one of the value plays considering his price this week. I do expect him to win. I like Jose Aldo, but I don't see myself getting here a ton. Our next value play is right below Jose Aldo in the pricing at 7,900. We got our girl. Yanan, and she's going to be fighting Lucie Pulilova this week. I like Wu to win. I don't have much confidence at all in the other side of this matchup. For DraftKings, I think Wu is super sneaky at this price because if you can afford Wu, then you can afford Jose Aldo, and most people are going to go the Aldo route as opposed to getting here. What I like about Yanan is that the grappling is there. Like, she's not a great grappler, but the willingness is there. Pulilova can't grapple. And Wu is still very young, learning, growing as a mixed martial artist. I expect her to look for takedowns this week and secure a few, maybe 2 or 3. If she does lean on her grappling and throws a lot of strikes when they're on the feet, I could see her coming away with a 90+ point performance on DraftKings, coming in at under 20% ownership. So I like the matchup, I like the leverage that we're going to get, and I like the grappling upside. So sneaky good value here at 7,900. Our next value play is at 7,700. We have Jay Perrin. He's going to be fighting Aoriqileng this week. Like we talked about in the video earlier in the week, I like Jay Perrin to lean on his grappling in this spot and to use that to get the job done and to win rounds. Aoriqileng was taken down over and over again by Cody Durden, and I rate the wrestling of Jay Perrin way more than flyweight Cody Durden. And Perrin showed a lot of promise in his UFC debut, stepping in on short notice to take on Mario Bautista, who we all know is very good. In that fight, he secured a few takedowns. He fought for the entire 15 minutes. It was his UFC debut. I think that is a good performance to build off of. Now, with a full training camp behind him, I think he has a chance to look very strong this week, especially in the clinch and on the mat. And you'll notice that money's been pouring in on this guy throughout the week. When this line opened, it was at minus 300 Aoriqileng. Now he's closer to a pick'em. So I like where the money is moving this week, which has not served us well in the past. Off the top of my head, I think the last 3 times we saw a line flip where an underdog on DraftKings was the favorite or a pick'em on your sportsbook. I think that was Kennedy and Zejiku when he lost. I think that was Sean Strickland Strickland against Alex Pereira. I think that was Stephanie Egger against Mayra Bueno Silva. And Nzechukwu got knocked out. Strickland got knocked out. Bueno Silva pulled some David Blaine type of armbar.
Let them see. Come here. See how.
So the line movement, when it swings heavily and you have a situation like this on DraftKings, historically has not been good to us, but I think we're due one because Jay Perrin, I think he's better everywhere except maybe punching power. So decent value this week because even if he wins a decision and he gets a lot of takedowns, he's still going to score a good amount of points. Give me Jay Perrin. And then we only have one more value play this week, and it's not that far down in the salary. You only have to travel another $100 to get down to Daniel Da Silva this week. What I hate about Daniel Da Silva is he's got bad cardio and he's fought a poor level of competition largely up until this point. Outside of his fight with Jeff Molina and Francisco Figeiredo, he did not fight very good fighters. But what I love about him is his first round upside, his power and speed on the feet, and his grappling. Victor Altamirano on the other side has no power. He really struggles to defend takedowns, and most of Victor Altamirano's losses are rear naked chokes. So I think the most likely outcome in this fight is Daniel Da Silva goes out there, gets him down in the first round, and finds a submission. Now, if that doesn't happen, he probably wilts. Things get dicey late, but I think Daniel Da Silva skill-wise is much better here. Now, if they just decided to strike, Altamirano's probably going to walk into a couple of shots like he did against Carlos Hernandez, who has no knockouts as a pro, mind you, and only 2 in his 15 amateur fights. So I think the speed and power combination on the feet from Daniel Da Silva could surprise Altamirano, and that chin that he has probably doesn't hold up as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some club and sub action in this spot either. Either way he wins, I see Daniel Da Silva inside the distance, which is going to result in a high DraftKings score, building value into his price. And he's the first fight of the night, so don't be surprised if he pulls off something crazy, say in the first round, and if you don't have him, you're sunk. But outside of that, I have no more value plays. The underdogs in this card outside of the 4 that we just looked at, I don't really have a lot of confidence in. I've changed my mind on one spot from earlier in the week. So we'll be using these fighters largely when we're building our lineups in just a second. But before we do, make sure you like the video. I would love to hit over 200 likes. I think we have yet to do that on this channel, so do your worst. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, because I heard that if you subscribe, it's good luck. I won't tell you where I heard it from, but it is. And comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. But now that that's out of the way, we can get into building some lineups, starting with your cash games this week. I think there's 2 schools of thought here. When it comes to your cash games, any way you slice it, you're going to want to stack this main event. I don't see it finishing all that quickly, so you're going to want both sides of this to capture that safe floor. Now, the first way that you could approach this is you could attack the mid-range, so you can come up to somebody like Jose Aldo, for example. You probably come up to AJ Fletcher. Now you've got 8,700 left over per fighter. You can grab somebody like Paulo Costa if you wanted to, and now you could probably come back down to somebody like Yanan. Now, if I was in this situation or you sent me this lineup, what I would do is probably tell you to spend more of the salary to get better matchups. The matchup that I would probably recommend that you attack is I would probably recommend taking out AJ Fletcher, and at this point, you really couldn't go wrong with any of these 4 right here. Let's say you wanted to go with Sean Woodson. You've left 400 salary on the table, but you've attacked the mid-range and you've got some good matchups, right? Like you're going to get a confirmed winner in that Usman-Leon Edwards fight. You've got Sean Woodson, who's probably going to win. You've got Paulo Costa, who's probably going to win. And then you've got 2 underdogs with Jose Aldo, who I think has a really good chance of winning a decision. Same with Yanan. And if you wanted to change that up just a little bit for a better, safer matchup, you could take Jose Aldo out and you can go with AJ Fletcher, and now you're playing only 2 underdogs. But the way that I would approach this is a little bit different. I would keep the main event in there for sure, but I would definitely come down here and punt one of the lower priced options. When you look at the 4 cheapest fighters, you have Tybura, Figgy, Shanna Young, and Harry Hunsucker. So last week I talked to some of you guys about this, and I feel like this is kind of where we need to start thinking when we're building our cash game lineups. When it comes to cash, you want a safe floor, but in my opinion, really what you want is 4 winners. If you have more than 4 winners, great, but 4 winners is the most important thing, because it doesn't matter if you come in first in your cash games or you come in just above the mid-range. It doesn't matter. As long as you cash, and everybody gets the same amount of money. You don't need to try to strive for first in your cash games. Well, we know that we're going to get a winner in Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards because we have both sides. So now we just need to find 3 other winners. Well, the best way to find 3 other winners is give yourself as much salary to work with as possible. So when we look at the 4 cheapest fighters, what we can do is think, well, they all probably lose. I don't like Hunsucker, I don't like Young, I don't like Figgy, I don't like Tybura. So now we have to rank in terms of who is most likely to get finished and least likely to get finished. Well, Harry Hunsucker, he's probably going to get finished, so I don't want to punt him even though he's really cheap. Shanna Young, I think Shanna Young gets finished, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, but I think Shanna Young gets finished. Marcin Tybura, I think, is the third most likely to get finished out of these four, so he wouldn't be a bad punt play in my opinion, but you also worry about the pace. You worry about his cardio. You worry about him getting dominated with the wrestling. So I find myself coming here to Francisco Figeiredo when I'm building my cash games, not because I think he's going to win, but I think this fight goes 15 minutes, and I think he'll have higher output and more scoring opportunities. So if we plug Francisco Figeiredo in there, we're looking at a situation where we have over 8,900 left over per fighter. So we can come all the way back up here, and now we can choose whoever we want, essentially. We can grab Sean Woodson, who we know is going to win. We can grab Jared Gordon, who we know is going to win. Now you can choose between Romanov or Paulo Costa. And if you wanted a slightly safer matchup, what I would recommend is going with Miranda Maverick. You have to get a little bit cheaper in this place, so what you're going to do is come off of Jared Gordon, and now you can grab Paulo Costa. There you go. You want these three fighters to win. They're probably going to win for you. You can play with the combination of the three, but this is how I would start my cash game lineups this week.
Write that down, write that down!
And now we can get into some tournament builds, but before we do that, we're going to look at over-owned and under-owned fighters this week. If you're new to the channel, I'll bring you up to speed. Each week we look at 3 fighters that are going to go over-owned, 3 fighters that are going to go under-owned, and then we use that when we're building our tournaments. So the first fighter that goes over-owned this week, I think, is right up here at 9,000, Alexander Romanov. Alexander Romanov is typically DraftKings Gold. I see a ton of people getting here, and it's really for good reason because he's averaging over 121 DraftKings points if you take out that fight with Juan Espino. But he is taking a step up in competition here. Marcin Tybura is not the kind of guy that's just going to let him get away with whatever he wants. He's going to give some resistance. He could really extend this guy. It's very, very possible. And if Alexander Romanov comes up with a 90-point performance, anything below 100 points coming in at 50, 60% ownership, it's bad biscuits. I think he goes over-owned. Now, our next fighter that goes over-owned is somebody who we touched on earlier. I think it's Jose Aldo. I think Jose Aldo, because of the name, the takedown defense, the matchup, I think Jose Aldo is going to garner a ton of ownership, and I don't know if it's totally worth it. Look at his recent 3-round decision performances in terms of DraftKings points. A 3-round win against Pedro Munoz where he landed over 100 strikes, 76 points. Nearly 6 minutes of control time against Marlon Vera, only 60 DraftKings points. If we go back to 2016 where we see another decision win, this isn't a 5-round fight, 64 points. I think that a lot of people are going to get here, and I think Jose Aldo burns a ton of people. I think he wins, but I do think that he goes over-owned. And then the last fighter that goes over-owned is right down here at 7,100. I really am struggling to understand what's going on in the public. I don't know where all of this Leon Edwards love came from, but it needs to stop. You might have seen my post on Twitter. If you have a creator out there who's telling you to play Leon Edwards, who's recommending that you put your money on Leon Edwards, I just can't get behind it. I think that Kamaru Usman is better everywhere. He's got better cardio, better grappling, more power in his hands. And this notion that Leon Edwards is going to be able to keep the feet and win rounds based on his striking, I can't support that thinking. I can't get behind it. I'm going to tell you what, I will symbolize how many rounds I think Leon Edwards is going to win by bites of pizza. For every bite of this pizza I take is how many rounds I expect Leon Edwards to win. Now in cash, yes, you're going to want him in your lineups because you're going to have the champion as well, but I don't see a situation where I'm going to play any Leon Edwards by himself. Leon Edwards for sure goes over-owned. Now we can clear this out and we can go to the fighters that are going to go under-owned, and first and foremost, up at 9,300, Miranda Maverick. Miranda Maverick's fighting Shanna Young this week. Miranda Maverick has takedowns, she's got aggression, pressure, and she's probably going to finish this fight inside the first or second round. I see her putting up a performance where she scores over 100 points and she probably comes in at below 20-30% ownership. It might even be vastly lower than that. She might come in at around 12 to 15%. And when I'm building lineups this week, I find myself putting her in a lot of my tournaments because I know that the public is going to be all over Usman, Romanov, Paulo Costa. They're going to pay up for Tyson Pedro. She's going to go under the radar. But out of all of them, she by far has the best matchup, the clearest path to victory. Shanna Young said it after her last fight. When she finds herself on bottom, she can't get up. I think she said something in the post-fight interview about not having the hip mobility to get up. Something with her hips makes it hard for her to get up from bottom, hip escape, stuff like that. I think Miranda Maverick puts her on her back early, lands a lot of ground and pound. Shanna Young gives up her neck and she finds a rear naked choke. I think she does it in the first round, second round at the latest. Miranda Maverick for sure goes under-owned. Next is a spot that I actually changed my mind on throughout the week. Jared Gordon. I initially picked Leonardo Santos to win, but we also talked about how Leonardo Santos has maybe 5 minutes of gas to get it done. Upon further review, you're noticing that Leonardo Santos is gassing in fights back in 2014. So if this guy was gassing at 34 years old, he's probably going to gas even faster at 42 years old, and Jared Gordon's a grinder. Jared Gordon's going to be able to get him down. He's going to be able to fight off the submission attempts that Santos is going to throw up early, and then he's going to land a ton of ground and pound, and he probably finds a finish late in the second or early in the third round. Or he can put together a similar performance to what he did against Chris Fishgold, where he threw over 240 strikes in the 3-round fight. You'll notice that not a lot of them are counted as significant strikes, but that's because the dude stays super busy, especially when he finds himself in a dominant position, and he scored 121 points that night. I think that Jared Gordon goes way under the radar this week. I don't think a lot of people are dying to click this button, not because they think he's going to lose. I think a lot of people are on this side, but I don't think from a DraftKings perspective many people are going to get here. For $100 more, you can get Alexander Romanov. For $200 more, you can get Kamaru Usman. For $200 less, you can get Paulo Costa. Not many people are getting here. Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky stuff. And then our last spot is a spot that we've already talked about. I don't need to get into too much detail with you. Yanan Wu coming in at $7,900, $100 away from Jose Aldo. She's got the much better matchup. She has all the tools to win here. Lucie Pulilova is not that great. It's women's MMA, so it's going to hold her ownership down generally, and she could end up doing some serious damage if she's able to put together a strong 3 rounds this week. And the cool thing about Lucie Pulilova is she's a willing dance partner. She's going to throw a lot of strikes. She's willing to stand there and trade. And Wu Yanan, like we saw against Bueno Silva, can stand there and trade as well, even when Silva was throwing a lot of power back her way. So Yanan Wu definitely goes under-owned. And with that, we can get into building some tournament lineups for this week. So I expect a ton of people to play Kamaru Usman. It's for good reason. Highest ceiling on the card, 5 rounds to work with. It's a no-brainer. Now, normally I show you what I think you would see a lot of in your contest, but I'm going to show you just what I think you should do to get away from that instead. So like we just talked about, Miranda Maverick and Jared Gordon are going to go way under-owned. Could we make a lineup work with both of them? I'm not sure. Because if you plug in Maverick and then you plug in Gordon, you've got 75-66 left over per fighter. It's not looking great. Because even if you come down here and you start grabbing a bunch of underdogs, you're going to grab Daniel Da Silva, you're going to grab Jay Perrin, and you've got 7,400 left over. It puts you in a tight spot. So you're probably going to have to make some tough decisions when it comes to Miranda Maverick, when it comes to Jared Gordon. So if you took Jared Gordon out, for example, then you probably find yourself in a situation where you're playing AJ Fletcher at 8,400, so that way you can come back here to Yanan Wu. Another thing that you could do is you could take out Miranda Maverick, you can plug in Jared Gordon. Now you've got 400 left over and you can make a slight adjustment at this point. So what I would do in this situation is I would come off of AJ Fletcher and I would just go grab Paulo Costa. I think that's pretty straightforward. Now, if you wanted to be really different, let's say you were playing in a big contest and you didn't roster Kamaru Usman. Let's say you thought Leon Edwards was able to take 2 rounds off the champ. Well, then let's say you come here to Miranda Maverick. Let's say you come here to Jared Gordon. You've got 79.50 left over. Then you can come down here to Daniel Da Silva. You can plug Jay Perrin back in. You can grab Jose Aldo. Now you've got 8,500. You come back up here to AJ Fletcher. I feel like that makes sense. If you're playing a lot of lineups, what you could do is you could get crazy and you can try to grab Harry Hunsucker, because out of the 5 that are down here, I think the person with the best chance of winning probably is Harry Hunsucker, just because he's coming down a weight class, so he's probably going to have a good size on him. He's very willing to fight. Like, he's a car crash kind of fighter. And Tyson Pedro, he's been clipped before, knocked out by an old Shogun. That's not a great look. Coming down to Harry Hunsucker opens up every opportunity that you want, because then you can go grab somebody who's cheap again, like Jay Perrin, 8,900 left over to spend, and this is where you can start getting those other pieces that you need. You can grab Jared Gordon, Kamaru Usman, Miranda Maverick. You've got 8,300 left over. You find yourself back with Jose Aldo, or what I think would make even more sense is Yanan. 400 left on the table, but you did exactly what you needed to do. Now, if you wanted to take him out, you wanted to plug in Figeiredo, I think that's okay if you're trying to get very different, but I probably wouldn't be playing this lineup myself. Now, let's say you wanted to play Romanov. Let's say you thought Kunith, I know you said he's going to go over-owned, but I like the guy. I think he's going to get it done. And I also like the champion Kamaru Usman. Well, now we're going to start to fall in a little bit of a pattern here, as we normally do toward this point in the video. Daniel Da Silva, Jay Perrin, 8,300 left over. Let's go grab Jose Aldo, and now we're back at AJ Fletcher. If you sent me this on Twitter, which you can at Kunith MMA, you'll see that guy right there. It's also linked in the description if you want a more direct way to get there. You can send me your lineups, and I'll tell you what I think. If you sent me this, I would say I like it, because your lineup needs to be able to tell a story, right? Alexander Romanov dominates with wrestling. I can get behind that. Kamaru Usman inside the distance. I could get behind that. First round upside from Daniel Da Silva, of course. Grappling upside from Jay Perrin. I think Jose Aldo wins a decision, and then AJ Fletcher, there's grappling upside as well. A couple of fighters that I don't see myself playing very much of is Tyson Pedro, not because I don't think he wins, but just because of the price. Amir Albazi, I don't think that he loses, but he also isn't going to put up a crazy amount of points. I see him getting takedowns, control time, doing decent work from top position, but I can also see an 83-point performance from him. Up at that price, it would absolutely sink your lineup. I think Usman, Romanov, Gordon is a good play. Woodson, I'm not really convinced that I want to get here when it comes to tournaments. We've seen him score 61 points in a decision win. We've seen him score 82 points in a decision win, and I feel like up with these more expensive fighters, you're going to need more than that. And then you know how I feel about the rest. I don't think Altamirano wins. I don't think Aoriqileng wins. AJ Fletcher, I would play him. Pulilova, I'm not really interested. I don't expect her to win. Merab, I see a lot of people getting to Merab this week, but I think Jose Aldo is just a nightmare matchup for a guy like Merab. But again, if you have lineups that we didn't look at, like if you have a Tyson, Pedro, Romanov, Merab build that you want to show me, send it over. I'll tell you what I think. And for those of you that don't know, we run a weekly contest. It's only $1, winner take all. I think the person who won last week got like $70 or something like that, so good on ya. In the contest, it's $1. You probably have enough crowns on your account so that you could play for free, and you get a chance to win a pot that continues to grow week over week. And we'll quickly finish up by going over some props that I like. There's only a few that I'll go over with you this week, and then we'll look at our plays for the entire card. The first prop that I really like, and this is a juicy prop for you guys out there that like your big odds. If you go to Daniel Da Silva and Victor Altamirano, and you look at Daniel Da Silva first round submission, it's currently sitting at plus 900. I definitely think that would be worth a shot. Another spot that I really like is in the Miranda Maverick fight. You're looking at a situation where you can get Miranda Maverick under 2.5 rounds at plus 100. I really like that this week. And that's not even Miranda Maverick under 2.5 rounds. That's just the fight under 2.5 rounds. So the chances of you winning are even wider. I really like that spot. Like we talked about before, Jose Aldo by decision currently sits at about plus 240. I'll put that up on the screen. Jose Aldo to win by decision, plus 240. There you go. And then Alexander Romanov, Marcin, Tybura. Right now, the over 1.5 sits at minus 190. I think that's sneaky. And then we'll just wrap it up with the full card, all the picks. I've got Kamaru Usman, Paulo Costa, Jose Aldo, Yanan Wu, Tyson Pedro, Alexander Romanov, Jared Gordon, Sean Woodson, Miranda Maverick, AJ Fletcher, Amir Albazi, Jay Perrin, and then Daniel Da Silva. If you have made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment for the algorithm, send me something on Twitter. Best of luck.